Welcome to the Navigator Podcast.
Welcome to the Navigator Podcast and some special bonus content for Navigate Academy's Module 59, Portfolio Management. Today, I'm thrilled to introduce our special guest, Michael Frank. With over 30 years of senior leadership and direct sales experience, Michael has built his reputation in developing high-performing teams, driving B2B growth, and delivering exceptional results for both customers and field teams. A focused, motivated, and passionate executive, he has a proven track record of creating significant market impact and fostering long-term profitable customer relationships. As a double-digit EBITDA producing leader, he brings a wealth of expertise in coaching, leadership, and strategic implementation, ensuring that organizations not only achieve their goals, but sustain long-term success. Beyond the corporate world, Michael's leadership roots run deep. Having served as a command military officer, he leads with confidence, vision, and readiness. His expertise spans business strategy, sales execution, team development, and process optimization, making him an invaluable voice in today's ever-evolving business landscape. Michael, it's great to have you here. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Patrick. I'm super happy to be here, and it's going to be fun.
Excellent. So let's just dive into some questions here, Michael.
Wonderful.
When we think about a portfolio and we consider what we sell and where our expertise lies, what are the risks of stepping outside of one's area of expertise when selling?
Oh, good question. My initial simplistic answer would be don't. Avoid stepping out. Yeah, right. Avoid stepping out of your area of expertise. However, today's world is resource rich, so consider bringing a partnership to the table, whether internal within your organization or with a company that has that expertise where they can bring and augment what your company does best. I've had experience with successful scenarios whereby sales executives within the same company have partnered on projects, and it works. I've had experience where companies partner with other companies, and that works too. However, they have to do so mutually agreeing upon the terms: commission splits, revenue splits, quotas, retirement, who's going to be lead seat, second seat, et cetera, et cetera. And all of this requires trust and a mutual commitment to a partnership with the same motives for a unified, predetermined set of goals for the outcome. What do you think?
I think trust there is a great key, Michael. Whenever you're forming a partnership, whether it be internal to your team with somebody else or cross-company collaboration, having trust is always going to be key to success.
It truly is. So let's go back to the beginning of the question and what happens if that collaboration's not there? My best answer is to be honest with the customer, ask for their forgiveness, to back away from the project, potentially recommend the best resource or company to engage that customer and project. But in doing so, my best recommendation would be to inquire about other projects that are in consideration, already budgeted, because it keeps you connected to your customer or potential customer. I think more often than not, salespeople will neglect to ask about other projects that the customer is considering. And as a manufacturer, at least in my manufacturing time, I watched too often an integrator walk out the door after talking about one particular project. Well, a different integrator was walking in the door to talk about a completely different project, and whereby that first integrator may have had all of that work simply because they explored a little bit more with the customer.
And I think to piggyback on that, you said maybe apologizing, walking away, but asking about other opportunities. During the webinar, we discussed the idea that saying no can be empowering for an integrator, and it can actually help integrators improve their profitability. How does that resonate for you?
I think that many times potentially sales executives might be lulled into deciding that they can't say no to a project or even to a customer. And sometimes that's fueled by the clock of looming quota attainment, a bunch of other reasons, right? But the reality could be, and likely is, that a bad project or a bad customer is still a bad project or a bad, maybe not bad, difficult customer, right? So although saying no isn't always easy, sometimes it's the best move for long-term success for the organization and frankly for the customer too. So what, have exercises, and I'm sure that your training allows for customers to walk through different exercises on how to do that.
And one of the things that we really see with saying no and walking away is it opens up other doors of opportunity, both for the company and the salesperson, things that are probably a better fit. So that brings a higher likelihood of close of that opportunity, higher profit margins on that opportunity because you're not stumbling through. And as you mentioned earlier, now you've got a customer that you're hopefully going to be stickier with because of a successful relationship, and they're going to bring you more business.
Yeah, and I would add to that, Patrick, that I think that a lot of times sales executives potentially make a mistake in selling the project with their own preconceived value of the project. Hence, they usually sometimes sell it for less than what the customer had budgeted or even willing to pay for the project. And I truly believe that this is a huge mistake, because it a lot of times happens because a salesperson doesn't follow a sales process, but it can certainly be avoided.
And us here at Navigate, we are big about process, and again, the sales process is key to our portfolio, but also how we move forward in closing opportunities and identifying the right ones for us.
Yeah, I think we can probably wrap up on this particular question by also just saying that I've experienced it way too often that if a project isn't or a customer isn't poorly, if not managed well from the very beginning, expectations get poorly aligned, and more than likely the provider is upset with the customer is upset with the provider. And I would always recommend pause, make sure that everything is kicked off well at the very beginning and that everybody understands the expectations.
Establish guidelines, manage expectations, and set ourselves up for a win-win. Otherwise, we're at risk of a lose-lose, right? Nobody wants that.
Absolutely, nobody wants that.
So I'm going to pivot here, and I'm going to ask you, why is it crucial for companies to align their portfolio with their overall strategic vision and long-term goals?
Oh, I love this question. For this conversation, I would first like to define portfolio as a collection of products and services. That said, where does a strategic vision and long-term goal come to play? My answer is both, as they make up the company's brand. I'm big on brand, right? So what is brand? Brand is clearly identified values and value propositions that a company absolutely strives to be known for. So I would say let's pause for a minute. And what about the strategic vision and long-term goals? How does this all sort of kind of come together? Their team, employees, if you want to call them that. I kind of hate it when we call our folks employees. We call them teams. But they have to be completely accepting of the values and the values propositions that make up the company brand. A company brand, its overall identity can be and usually is made up of identities of the team. Again, employees, if you want to say that, right? And here lies the problem. If you've read the more recent Gallup poll, 31% of the employees are engaged in their current job, meaning they are neither not happy or, well, they're probably very happy. It's the rest of the percentage that
the other 69%.
Yeah. And to make things a little bit worse, 17% are completely disengaged and more than likely not happy with their company and or their job or for whatever other circumstance. So there's a giant impact on company brand when that vision's not aligned, the brand's not aligned, and I think it's really important that all of that is taken into consideration.
And I think one of the things that you and I can both agree on is when we look at the team in an organization, and they know what they do well, and we as leaders are asking them to go do what they do well. We're setting them up for success each and every time. We're going to see that engagement increase. We're going to see that 31% move up to 45% or 60%. Companies that manage their portfolio well really are going to see an uptick in that employee engagement. That employee net promoter score is going to be significantly higher.
I think so as well. Well said.
So during the webinar, we emphasized the importance of integrators kind of understanding who their ideal client is. And you've had a long career in sales. In fact, that's where you and I first met.
Yeah.
From your experience, how does having a well-defined ideal client profile benefit integrators?
Um, that's a good question. I think there exists a likelihood that a lot of sales executives don't think enough about who their ideal client is. And that's not to say that not all do that, right? But more often than not, I think sales executives will take on a project and satisfy their immediate quota and maybe some deficiencies in quotas. Um, and give a price or submitting the team to something out of their wheelhouse or an ideal outcome. But where this is very important is that sales executives need to have a yearly success plan, a roadmap, if you will. And I think it needs to, not I think, I know it needs to address the who, what, where, and how they plan to achieve and secure their quota and go about their business model, right? And that plan does absolutely have to indeed include the definition of who their ideal client is. And that's going to change from year to year. And when do they revisit this plan? They have a tendency of revisiting the plan only yearly, but the plan has to be revisited more regularly. And I would recommend monthly at a minimum, but certainly weekly would be better.
Sure. When I think about understanding your ideal client, I think back to my early days in sales, where anybody that was willing to sign a proposal or give me a purchase order was my ideal client. As you said, I had to relieve my quota and I had to do something to move forward with it. Then I moved on, and a lot of times I see uh, salespeople focusing on those big projects, the elephants. But
Yep.
when they actually win one, they're not aligned with an operations team that can execute. Right? They
Yep.
can't deliver a $2 million project because their sweet spot's that $50,000 project. So in that respect, when you look at the link between the sales team's desire and the operations team's ability, and where they overlap, where does that sweet spot fall, in your opinion?
Oh, that's a really great question. Um, I I think it comes to play when you realize who your customer really is and what you can do for your customer. And over time, if in fact the customer is repeatedly bringing business to the doorstep, meaning they really are that sticky long-term customer, then you can determine how best to interact with that customer because you and that customer have that long-term plan together. You've formulated what their long-term plans were. You've examined how you can impact their long-term plans. And we talked at the very beginning about potentially saying no to things that are completely out of your wheelhouse or where you can't bring partners to the table, but can find good people to solve your customers' problems. So I think in the end, it's really about being comfortable with what you're ultimately trying to accomplish for yourself, but with your customer. And you're absolutely right. It's, not necessarily that you're doing just big elephant projects with your customers. It might be that your best customer is one that just brings you a consistent number of projects every single year. And what's even more remarkable is that the customer sits down with you and says, let's plan our success for the year based on what kind of budget I have available, what I ultimately need to accomplish, what's going on with technology, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that's what I think.
I think that's a great answer. So thank you for sharing that, Michael.
Sure.
Last question, and last question is always the same from podcast to podcast. We are passionate about personal and professional growth, and books are often a key resource of inspiration and learning. What book are you currently reading that's helping you grow, whether it be a business book, a leadership book, or a book on life?
Well, I'm currently reading 3 books. But I think I'm going to answer this with a book that I believe everybody should read. I've actually read it multiple times. And by the way, if you're not a really good reader, download the book. Listen to it on, I was going to say on tape, but download the book, right? But anyway, the name of that book is called The Obstacle is the Way by Ryan Holiday. And it really puts life into perspective and really helps you step through how to encounter challenges, taking challenges and putting them into the right perspective. And that in the end, a challenge is a challenge, right? Every challenge, most challenges are just obstacles. The obstacle is in the way. They can be overcome. They're not as bad as they initially appeared at the very beginning. And I think that book puts a really good, fresh perspective on and basically sets you up with a good toolkit of how to handle obstacles.
Well, Michael, thank you for sharing that. And thank you for being a guest on our podcast today. I really appreciated your input and your feedback. And I look forward to talking to you again soon.
You're welcome, Patrick. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.